What's going on, guys? It's Charr here, back with another video. Now, if I told you I knew I was going to be titling this video, I literally have no idea. It's going to be something along the lines of 0 to hero, 0 to 9, how I learned to make multiplayer decks in less than a week. And you might be wondering, what the heck is sparking this video? What's going on? So before we get into the topic proper, if you only care about multiplayer deck building, as always, click the annotation on the screen and go to the thumbnail, or just go to the chapter below. But what sparked this is that I'm actually going to the Con of Heroes. Now, I didn't really mention it a ton on the channel. It's been in a couple of videos. I'll probably have a community post. If you are going to the Con of Heroes as well, feel free to say hi to me. Let's get a game in. I would love to play with anyone and everyone who's ever seen anything on this channel. It'd be a ton of fun to meet you, put some names to faces, and just have some fun. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, I will briefly talk about what the Con of Heroes is before getting into the name of the video proper, which is what the heck, 0 to 9 decks in a week, how I learned to deck build in multiplayer, etc. So let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, so here we are at the main website. Now, the Con of Heroes is an unofficial con. Let's go to the about. It might say something better. It's an unofficial con for the Marvel Champions card game, run by a couple of great people in the community. I'm pretty sure it's Kennedy Hawk, is one of the main kind of contributors and organizers of the event, from my understanding. What happened is it's in this building game center in Roseville, Minneapolis, and it's right across the street from where the game is actually created, Asmodee or Fantasy Flight Games headquarters. So it's basically a convention that is just all about Marvel Champions. You play Marvel Champions. Here's a picture of one of the cons here. You play it. They make custom scenarios in recent times, and it's definitely a ton of fun. Now, I really got into this game in the past year, but by the time I was really getting into it, the con for 2024 had passed, so I knew I couldn't miss the 2025 one, which is happening May 2nd through the 4th. They already have a schedule and everything here. The con hours Friday 12 to 10, 10 to 9, and then 10 to 6, and all the little like events that are happening. There's a custom Carnage scenario. If this sounds at all fun to you, I will be doing not really content at the con, but maybe like vlogs, travel vlogs, and whatever. I'll probably upload it after I'm back from the con, which will be around Monday of next week. And then also Silk and Shuri should be out by then. So there's going to be a ton of content coming down the pipeline for sure. So make sure you guys are staying tuned for that. There's just so much going on right now, and I've been like kind of scrambling, which leads to kind of like the topic of today's video. This is some of the past events, this table of like shared cards. This is a picture from the 2024 event, so I'm sure a lot of the people who went to some of these older ones will be showing up once again at the new con. I cannot wait, and as always, if you are going, make sure that you leave me a comment or, get a game in with me. It would be so much fun. But let's get to what the video specifically today is talking about. So in all the hubbubaloo of kind of planning for a trip and, dealing with uploads on the channel, as you saw, a part of me getting down nitty gritty in multiplayer deck building was there wasn't a second video next week. It came out 2 days ago on Tuesday, which was that for fun Marvel Champions art tier list. But yeah, so I was just busy like really getting down into the nitty gritty of how the heck do I deck build for multiplayer. And I just wanted to talk through my experience and then tell you guys maybe some tips and tricks I learned on deck building for multiplayer that can hopefully make your decks even better. So let's just go through this and let's talk about how I would make a deck for solo, and let's compare that to how I would make it and change it for multiplayer. So when I'm talking about me specifically, at least when I make decks for solo, I have a really good shorthand or a really good idea of what I'm looking for in a deck. We're just going to use Black Panther as an example here, because this is one of the few decks I published that I'm actually bringing to the con that I was a really big fan of, and I hope you guys will check it out maybe during or after this video is over. But in solo, when I was going through the content on my own, and I marginalized, or not marginalized, but I sort of sorted out cards in my head that I thought were good and bad. And what I meant by that is, for solo specifically, is this a card I would ever think about playing, or is this a card that I'm just absolutely just never even going to consider at any other time? So there's a couple examples. There's a card here like well, a couple of these basic allies are actually really good. But let's look at something like Heimdall here, right? So in solo, he's like a 5 cost ally. He has the Asgard trait. He has 2 Thor, 3 attack, and 4 health. So immediately when I viewed this card when I was learning and playing the game, I'm like, 5 cost, that is, a ton to pay for an ally. He has some good stats and he has a decent HP pool. I don't like the double consequential, but I'm like, okay, this is a really expensive card. It really does need to make up for it by its effect. So then you look and the response says, after Heimdall enters play, look at the top 3 cards of the encounter deck, discard one of them and put the others back in any order. So you look at Heimdall as a complete package, and solo specifically, where it's a matter of getting ahead on resources and tempos in the villain. This is just a card I've never even considered playing. Asgard isn't a super represented trait. It's a bit too costly for what it does. I feel like the attack is good, but his health is too low. You only really get to attack with them twice. 5 cost for 5, I guess 10 total thwart, or sorry, 8 total thwart isn't terrible, and he does give you a little bit of encounter deck knowledge. So it seems like an effect that is mostly used for solo because it doesn't really matter that much. You're just looking at boost cards in multiplayer. Seems like it's a card that's the best in solo, but this is a card I would never even dream about considering in a solo game. That being said, because all of these shorthands only were made with the solo perspective, when I was going with multiplayer, I was kind of having like analysis paralysis, decision paralysis. I'm like, whoa, I need to reevaluate every single one of these cards in the game. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. Obviously, a card like Heimdall is kind of like an easy picking, where in multiplayer you could build around him and do something goofy, but he's still not the best, the best card ever created. So one of the first things I did to actually learn multiplayer was to really pay attention to cards. And if you go to cards here, Marvel CDB, if you look and you do this advanced search in text, if you look, I think it's under, if we search text, you can see every single card that can be played under any player's control. For example, you see this aggression upgrade that says, now I'm mad, play it under any player's control. These cards, this is a line of text you'll probably usually ignore in solo because of the fact there's only one player, so this doesn't really matter to you. But it's so much more crazy and powerful in multiplayer because now, let's say you're an aggression player and then you have another leadership player on the table. You have a card like Boot Camp, which is good, but might be a bit low tempo in solo. It's a 3-cost support. Each ally you control gets +1 attack. So it's pretty solid in solo. You could do like aggression ally builds if you have enough economy. But in multiplayer, you can play this under your own aggression ally spam, but you can also play it under your leadership players. So now you're just kind of dishing out buffs to 2 different people on the table, and it's worth including more than 1 or 2 copies of this card, maybe even 3. Maybe you're doing with 2 other leaderships. You're just putting the boot camps all around the table. There's other really good examples of this, but a lot of them are the team cards, which is something that can be really powerful. So let's say you're doing something like you have a person playing Guardian, an aggression Guardian deck, right? And there's a lot of really good aggression upgrades for Guardian allies specifically, but because they're a Guardian and they're an aggression, they can't actually play the Guardian's team card, which is very good. If you see here, if each of your characters has the Guardian trait, this card gains response after you play an upgrade on an ally, draw a card. So if you're doing this aggression ally spam and you're throwing these really strong upgrades like energy sphere on your Guardian allies, your leadership player taking 2, that 3 effective resource hits to play this under you is going to be refunding that aggression player to have them have better turns, deal with more minions on the board and stuff like that. So this play under any player's control is just a really good option to start when you're thinking about deck building for multiplayer. There's a couple of them where if you search under specifically, it doesn't actually work that well. An example of a card is like Clarity of Purpose, which is an absolutely insane card, but this just says attached to a friendly character. So I think maybe there's an option where if you search friendly, you might find different cards that aren't like play under other players' control. So if you see, like, there's even some specific allies that are cool. It's like Elixir. After Elixir attacks or thwarts, heal and damage from another friendly character. This isn't just your identity or your allies. It's any ally on the board or any identity on the board. And there's so many things like this. There's another one, exhaust R&D facility. So you still do have to play this yourself as a leadership player, but you can choose a friendly character and play that character gets +1 thwart and attack until the end of the phase. This is something you can put on the board in multiplayer, and instead of buffing your own hero or your allies, you can buff someone else's hero. Imagine you're playing something like this comment says, like a Quicksilver or Spider in multiplayer, and you take that kind of hit in your economy. Now you're buffing up their turn and making it super efficient and super fun. There's a couple other cards that are like, really interesting. So we have like ready a friendly android character and heal 1 damage. Let's say you're playing with a vision on the table and you want to spend cards in your deck to help them ready and go nuclear. Yeah, go for it. You can just ready them off turn, call an action. This is crazy because it is just an action too, so you can also be alter ego. There's so many cool and fun combos you can do in multiplayer, and those are just 2 tips out of so many when considering changing a deck from a solo build to changing a deck from to a multiplayer build. An example of some cards that also scale really poorly, I would say this is a justice specific tip. So cards like One Way or Another is an example of a card that is really good in like solo and 2-player, where you search the encounter deck for side scheme, reveal that side scheme, and draw 3 cards. You have to really consider threat scaling in multiplayer. This is justice specifically, where you wouldn't really want to include a card like this unless you have a really specific plan or you're playing a specific scenario where actually clearing that side scheme is beneficial. Because if you pull out a card of the encounter deck and you're drawing 3 cards, instead of coming in with 3 threat in a 4-player game, it's coming in with 12. So this is a card I would think, not that you wouldn't include it, but you do need to proceed with caution and think about it's not just an auto include. Another one is like clear the area. This is like a solo staple in justice because the threat is so low, the side schemes are so low, and the main is so low. This is a really easy thwart that you can kind of use one effective resource because it'll refund you as soon as you clear all the threat off a scheme. This is not something I would ever really see myself playing in multiplayer almost ever, unless you're just such a good thwarter that you can constantly hit this kicker. It's just not really realistic in my opinion. All of that being said, let's go back to the example I was going to talk about. So let's see how I would go about making a Black Panther deck for solo and how I would tweak that for multiplayer. So we're just going to do something really simple here. Black Panther is actually one of the heroes I'm bringing to the con. I think he's a ton of fun. And I would have brought probably his sister, Charr, the new Black Panther, but she got delayed here in the US. So I just decided I didn't have any games on her. I wasn't going to try to scramble to get the hero pack on day of release during the con. It's just not worth it. I'll come back, do some talkings and testings with both of the new heroes, and we'll just go from there. So if we're making Black Panther, let's say I want to go... I don't know, let's say I want to go like Avengers Leadership. It's a really solid archetype for him, and there's just so many good things he can do. So let's say Avengers Leadership here. So the first thing we would do is we would search, I think, Avenger. Yeah, if you do K hyphen and then Avenger. Another way you can find these like shorthands, it should be here, or I forgot where you can actually search what the hyphens are. I don't remember. But there is somewhere that you can see where, oh no, it's just like if you go here, so it's like, let's say you go type, or we go Avenger maybe, and then X. Ooh, I forgot what the trait search one. Oh, okay, no, I think the trait one's here. This is how you know. So let's say you want to go Avenger, right? And then you click search here, you'll see that to search trait specifically, you put a K in front of it. So let's say we're making Avengers Leadership here, like, okay. Blade, sure, why not? Let's throw him in here. He's decent in terms of like, if you have an extra resource sink, he can do some pretty decent things. I actually like War Machine Ally, believe it or not. Avengers Mansion is just a classic. That's not really anything other than Avengers. Let's say I'll do Quinn Carrier, right? Because he is an Avenger, he can get a wild resource. And Avengers Tower is good. If each of your allies has the Avengers trait, increase your ally limit by 1. Exhaust Avengers Tower, reduce the cost of the next Avenger ally. Sure, why not? So we have these supports, and that's all for basic. Let's go ahead and go to leadership real quick. And so there's like a million different Avengers allies in leadership. So let's go ahead and throw a couple in. Let's say like Ant-Man's pretty good. There's some, dubious how good they are. I mean, Captain America I like to include if we're just spamming a ton. Yeah, let's say Falcon. He's pretty strong in solo. I like that one. We'll overlook a couple of these. If we're going like kind of Voltron, we can include Iron Man, but I usually don't. Let's do Kalu. We can find us like a Wakanda Forever. We do something like Squirrel Girl, maybe like a Stinger. And what else do I like doing? White Tiger if I'm playing like Expert, right? And then maybe we go, yeah, I don't know what to do. US Agent. Sure, we're on 10 allies. So let's say that's that. So now let's get rid of this trait. So we have our Avengers ally lineup. So now let's go in all of the cards. So if we're playing Avengers, we probably want to play the team card, right? So we're going to go here. I think it's a support. So it is the Mighty Avengers. Let's go throw in 2 to 3 copies of that, right? It's not bad. It's not solid, or like it's not bad. It's a really solid card, especially if you never break that. But because we don't have the Avengers trait when we flip down to Alter Ego, you might want to throw in a, what's it called, Honorary Avengers, just so we can throw that on ourselves. So that's pretty decent, right? So now we never actually break that Mighty Avengers, and we're already at 30 cards, right? So this isn't too bad. What else would we want to add to this? So we need our basic doubles, right? So let's go ahead and do this. We can do Energy, Genius, and Strength. This is pretty good. I don't think we need leadership doubles in this deck. T'Challa is also pretty good at, just dealing with threats on the board. He's really good at dealing with his economy. He's got 3 double resources in the Vibranium, and then also these 3 basic doubles. I think that's more than enough. I think if we do the Justice ones, it's kind of overkill here. Let's go to leadership. There's probably more things here. So especially in leadership events, we're probably just going to throw in an easy, what's it called? Where's make the call here? Yeah, we'll probably throw in an easy make the call right there. It's not bad. And then we've got a couple other things here where it's just, we can do maybe an Avengers Assemble. This isn't bad, right? Ready each Avenger character you control. And then they all get +1 Thor and +1 attack. So Avengers Assemble is pretty good for closing out end games and whatnot. And then we have like three cards here that we can pick. Let's just say, what would we want to do? Oh, maybe we could do like, I was thinking a call for backup. That's actually pretty decent. Maybe we can go like, what's it called? Clarity of Purpose. It's a pretty good research generator. And let's say like we throw in like one more card. Let's do a side scheme. Let's do build support. So no, sorry, superpower training. Yeah, we want to get our upgrades in play. And boom, here we go. This is basically, we could even throw in different cards, but I think honestly we might want, what's it called? Rapid response. Let's throw in like 2 copies of that right now. We're at 42 cards or something. Usually most of my decks and so are around 42, 44, around that area. Boom. This is like really quick, really simple, and I don't even have to play test this to know it's an extremely effective Avengers leadership deck for T'Challa. Everything just makes sense. We're almost maxing out on a ton of Avengers allies. We've got an Avengers Assemble that we can search off Kalu or maybe a Wakanda Forever. We have 3 make the calls to just get any ally we need for the situation. We have 6 resources. We have rapid response. We got clarity of purpose. We got 2 mighty Avengers. This is like anything and everything we'd ever want, right? Super good lineup. But now let's think about this from a multiplayer perspective. So now that we go up to multiplayer, what happens? There's so many more players on the table. The threat on the side schemes and the player side schemes are ballooning. So how would I approach this in terms of making this a multiplayer deck? And I'll show you what I specifically did and cover that deck that I made at the end here while going over a couple of my other ones. So one thing that I like to do when I'm playing leadership is that there are so many cards in leadership specifically that you're either able to affect other players or kind of under any player control type cards. So for an example of a card I might want to switch out, so Avengers Assemble, I really like this card. It's really great for closing out games in solo, but it's rarely going to warrant the slot in my opinion in this deck because we don't need help closing out games when we have 4 other people. Those people should be able to pull their weight in a way that's effective when you're pushing for that, pushing for game essentially. So maybe we would just drop an Avengers Assemble. If we wanted a similar type of buff, we could go something like Lead from the Front, which is a really good card, and it's a core box card that most people don't understand that says choose a player. So it's not just you. Each character that player controls gets +1 Thor and +1 attack to the end of the phase. It's half the cost of Avengers Assemble. You don't get the ready, but you do get the versatility of maybe you don't have your allies built out, or maybe you don't have this or that. You can just choose to do Lead from the Front instead on another player out of turn, and that just automatically will make them have a higher output turn. Another thing that I think is important to keep in mind when we're talking differences from solo to multiplayer is that we actually don't need as many allies as you think you do in a multiplayer game. Usually allies are, I don't call them a crutch, but they're really strong in solo for dealing. They're just so versatile for dealing with minions on the board, dealing with side schemes and threat. They can just have multiple activations and block for you. This isn't as important when you're thinking about a multiplayer game. An example of something that we might not need to include, I mean, we don't really need Stinger, right? It's a good ally, but she's not like amazing. If we're looking at US Agent, this guy, he has really good output, especially with Mighty Avengers. And if we're still going that avenue, we'd probably keep him. But here's an example of a card where this is a really solo to 2-player focused card, in my opinion. Let's read the Falcon ally. After he enters play, look at the top 3 cards in the encounter deck. For each treachery looked at this way, remove 1 threat from his scheme. This ability is good, but I wouldn't say it's amazing. For solo and for 2 players specifically, you get to see a couple boosts and you get to see an actual encounter card coming up. In multiplayer, starting at 3 to 4 player, all this is doing is looking at boost cards. And the boost cards at that point don't really matter, so I'd probably drop Falcon from this deck list. And so there's so many considerations like that you have to really think about. How good the cards you're putting in your deck is. So if you look here for call for backup, you know, each player may search their deck and discard all for an ally put into play. That's really good. And 3 threat, I mean, Black Panther can hit that super easily in solo. But now we're thinking about what's it called? In a multiplayer perspective, this is a great card, but do you have the 12 threat needed to actually get rid of this? In every single game, I would say no. And similar with super power training, where you don't need these turbo consistency cards because everything sort of like evens out as long as everyone's playing like a somewhat competent deck. You don't need these super turbo consistency cards because you don't need that tempo to defeat the villain on like turn 4, turn 5, right? You will have a little bit of a buffer, a little bit of time to actually build out, to hit your Panther Claws, to hit your Energy Daggers, to find Tactical Genius and your Vibranium Suit. So they're not like super required. One thing I would like to consider though is the idea of the play under any player control cards, or ways that you can actually buff your allies. So I use the example of like all these cards you can play under any player's control. Here's one of them that I pointed out, which is we have 1 copy of Clarity of Purpose, but remember it says attached to a friendly character, which is the other players at the table, not just your identity and not just your allies. This is any friendly character, and just read how insane this is. Exhaust this card and deal 1 damage to the attacked character, generate a wild resource. This is a permanent wild resource generator in barring a cutoff guard. All it does is give everyone the Venom Symbiotic Bond passive and just buffs economy to a level that's absolutely crazy for a cost that isn't too bad. This is a automatic 3 of inclusion in my opinion. Depending on the leadership deck you're trying to do, it just makes everyone on the table so much stronger. Another example for like kind of multiplayer specific leadership card is something like a Maria Hill. So we're going to look at Maria Hill here, and it's like, okay, she's not an Avenger, so that does break our Avenger kind of theme we had going on, but her effect in multiplayer is so strong. After she enters play, each player draws 1 card. We'll go ahead and throw her in the deck. There's a couple other cards you can throw in that are really good, maybe like a Slingshot. There's some cards that aren't Avenger specific that are just really good. Another shout out for leadership specifically is Mission Leader here. So only, obviously only leadership decks can include this card, but it's so good. You reduce the cost by 1 if you have the soldier trait, doesn't matter. After a side scheme is defeated, exhaust Mission Leader, each player draws 1 card. So this is an absolutely insane card. It's kind of like a Maria Hill, but when you're clearing side schemes. It's just a very good card to include in multiplayer. Another example of like you can buff other activations. You have when an ally makes a basic thwart or basic attack action. So this isn't just your allies, it's any allies. You can remove a counter from here. Each ally gets +1 thwart and attacks. We'd go ahead and throw that one in there. And there's other considerations here too. You can kind of maybe mold and shape the deck in a way where it gets out of the Avengers kind of idea, right? So let's say, okay, maybe I want to throw a Cable in here, right? Maybe I want to get some thwarting going. And then X-23 is also a really decent ally that helps you with board control after she defeats an enemy. Will ready her, right? So let's throw an X-23 in there. So now we're kind of getting out of this like kind of Avengers type of build. So maybe we drop a Blade here, and then let's say we also drop US Agent and War Machine. So you'll find like Mighty Avengers is super strong and super powerful in solo. Like that extra 1 attack and 1 thwart is so good. It bumps almost all your Avengers allies to immediately clear player side schemes and things like that. It's just very strong and powerful, but you don't necessarily need that. So let's say we drop the Avengers Tower, right? And then we also drop the Mighty Avengers. So what are some other replacements here? So we could probably go like Triskelion instead if we're trying to keep our allies out. Another example will play under any player's control here is team training. So if you have any other leadership players on the table, if you have an aggression boot camp player that's trying to keep their allies out, this is another example. Play under any player's control. We can throw ahead and throw in 1 copy. You can throw in 2 or 3. This is an example of where talking to the table before you get into a game could really help you modulate your deck a little bit to kind of like a sideboard in a way, in like a traditional card game. And you're just making a deck that is, you know, really fine-tuned to the environment that you're actually playing in, and that all of you guys will have a good time and succeed. So like I said, this is just an example of a way you can think about, you know, taking a solo deck list and adjusting it for a multiplayer setting. So we'll go ahead and cancel all those edits, and let's show like the Gift of Wakanda. If we go to my profile right here, this is one that I published a few days ago here. So this is one that has a write-up here. So the whole idea behind this deck, so we're not doing any Avengers things. Another shout-out was the command team. You can remove 1 command counter, ready an ally. It's any ally, not just yours. So the whole idea behind this is using Black Panther's high economy to constantly recur his signature ally, Shuri. She has a response after she enters play. It's not from the hand, so it can be off rapid response or make the call. You search your deck for an upgrade and add it to your hand. And so that play under any player's control also applies to like basic upgrades or leadership upgrades. So let's look at a couple that we can search out. So you've got Clarity of Purpose that we already talked about. That's an upgrade that Shuri can find for us. Endurance is another upgrade that Shuri can find for us. Play under any player's control. We can hand out 3 health buffs to the table. Another one we have is the Reinforced Suit, which again, if there's any allies on the table at all, we can attach to an ally. That ally gets +2 hit points. +2 hit points is absolutely insane, especially if they plan on activating with that ally over and over again. You just get so much value throughout the course of the game. The ways that we have to recur Shuri here is 2 rapid response and 2 make the call. And then we also have some other upgrades in the deck, so we make sure Shuri never whiffs on us. And, you know, we have our upgrades, which the whole point of this deck isn't to turbo out his upgrades like Black Panther tends to do in solo. It's to help raise the power level of the table, and then once it has been sufficiently raised, flipping down, taking advantage of Golden City, his double resources, to then build out his upgrades and have really high Wakanda Forever turns. You have other examples in here like Cell Phone, which is a really fun card that came in the Jubilee pack. You can exhaust it to remove a charge counter from here. You can choose a player, and that player can make a basic attack or thwart with any character they control or their identity out of turn order and get +1 to it. Just really good for sequencing, making sure we can get rid of any guard icons or crisis icons to help people have better turns. And we also have that 1-of copy of Leadership Skill. Most of the reason why Cell Phone, you can have as many copies under your control as possible. Leadership Skill only has 1, but I think I would never play multiple Cell Phones. I'm sure this deck can produce hands that just have better things to do, in my opinion, so I think 1 and 1 was fine. That really is just an example of how you would go about changing and adjusting decks for multiplayer, going from solo mindset to a multiplayer mindset and things such as that. There's some decks I didn't actually make myself. This is an example of one of them. All I did was just change a couple of cards in here. If you want to find the original poster, it's the same exact title. This is an example of how leadership really blossoms, in my opinion, in multiplayer. You have a card like Overwatch, which is completely overlooked in solo. There's almost no reason to ever run this as a hero interrupt. When any amount of threat is removed from a scheme by a thwart, discard this card, remove an equal amount of threat from a different scheme. So it's just not great in solo, but as soon as you get into multiplayer and you have these side schemes that come in with 12 threat, if you remove 6 threat off the main, might as well remove 6 off that side scheme, and then it's really versatile, really strong, and it helps you get those thwart numbers down. There's so many ways you can buff thwarting through operative skill, through passion for justice. You want to hit the sense of justice resource generator, and skilled investigator is an insane card. It's kind of like a pseudo mission leader. It's a 0-cost upgrade you can play under any player's control. Anytime a side scheme is defeated, it can be exhausted and people can draw off of that. Just another way of buffing the economy, helping out the table. This deck is just only focused on thwarting, so you can specialize really well. I love this Gifts of Wakanda deck because it's so specialized in supporting the table and then using his high economy and output to get his upgrades on the table and help finish out the game when it's needed. I'm super excited for the Con of Heroes this weekend, and I hope you guys kind of enjoyed this kind of deep dive into my psyche of how 0 to hero I went from having 0 decks and almost no idea of how to make a multiplayer deck to have about 9 created decks. I guess I'll cover them kind of briefly, even though I clicked away We're on Iceman Aggression. We're on Cable Justice. We're on Cable Leadership. We're on Pool She-Hulk. I did not make the Miss Marvel deck. We're on, Protection Doctor Strange. We're on Aggression Cyclops, and we're on Leadership Black Panther. I also did make a Leadership Star-Lord deck that I didn't actually create in Marvel CDB. I kind of created it by hand, but Star-Lord is pretty simple. So in terms of making a deck list for him, I just had to make those same multiplayer adjustments that are more than capable. I know you guys can do it. And yeah, let me know what you guys thought of this video. Let me know what kind of shorthands, tips, and tricks you have for deck building, whether that be in solo, in multiplayer, or any other mode of play. Let's say you're primarily playing 2 or 3 player. Let me know what you find different and how you change it up from solo to 4 player. Hope you guys were able to find some use out of this video. It was a ton of fun to just talk about multiplayer generally. Super excited to get a ton of multiplayer games in at the con. And yeah, there will be definitely some con content, like a recap and maybe a vlog while I was there after the fact when I'm back home next week, along with more Shuri content. There's so much stuff coming to the channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, hanging out as normal. Take care of yourselves. Have yourselves a good one. See you in the next one. Goodbye.